If you feel like you've done all the hard work to have a podcast and you're still not getting listens, you're still not getting downloads, you probably want to quit. But the thing is, do you actually want to quit? You probably started a podcast for a lot of good reasons, and I get it. But I've also quit things many times. Maybe it was a passion project, maybe you wanted help with brand awareness, maybe you wanted an additional income stream, or maybe it was just an outlet for your creativity or for you. Now look, if any of these sound like you, let me know in the comments which one resonates with you the most. As a podcast producer, I promise you I can identify some very common mistakes that you're probably making, and I'm gonna highlight them in this video so that way you have clarification on whether you should keep going and just like tough it out, or whether you should just wrap it up. So the very first thing we notice when people's podcasts fail, and I've been there, is that we are creating content that we want to make and not necessarily what the audience wants or needs. Now, trust me, I encourage people all the time, if you have expertise, if you have knowledge that you want to share, you should share that knowledge. And there's a lot of reasons to do that besides just helping people. But if you start to make podcasts or videos or whatever it is that you do, and you start to notice that some of the things that you really want to talk about are not hitting, and some of the things you talk about less are the ones that are hitting, then you need to listen to your audience. And if you don't do that, you are going to be in trouble. Now, if you create content already, especially on social media, I promise you, you've had those situations where you thought something was going to be a banger and you spent so much time on it and it didn't hit. And then something you took 5 seconds on blew up and got a ton of engagement. Well, the same thing goes here, and if that conflict is going to be too much for you, I suggest doing one thing, and that's called one for me, one for them. Double up your podcast output or your video output and do something that you want to talk about, but also do something later in the week that the audience wants. And that way you're going to have a little bit more of a balance and you're not going to be as conflicted or frustrated. Without consistency or workflow, podcast is going to be a total pain for you. Now, a lot of people underestimate how much work actually goes into podcasting, whether it's getting your episode outline, the show structure, your intro, the music, and all these other things, and keeping audience engagement, of course, which is huge because of how often and easy it is for us to be distracted. But one thing that's going to get in your way more than anything is just rushing to record that episode because you didn't batch record, because you didn't have a workflow or a system for that. Now, I'm telling you, as someone who used to fly attack helicopters in the Marine Corps, a checklist was needed for everything. And you might be a creative who likes to wing it and you just want to imagine and visualize, oh, I'm going to go get this shot. Or as a podcaster, you're just going to, flow with the conversation and pull on the thread where it needs to be. It's not that simple. You definitely can use a checklist or bullets or some sort of structure that is going to help you with the flow, whether it's when you're going to record your episodes, whether it's how you're going to schedule your episodes, whether it's the template for your show notes. Without a system or an appropriate workflow, it's just going to get agonizing and you're going to be like, I'm out. And we don't want that to happen to you. And if you don't have those things or need help with those things, we have a free resource we'll put in the description. It covers episode outlines and ideation, the show flow, and scheduling. Now, if you take the time to go to some of these podcast players' applications, then you'll be able to see more analytics. What do I mean? I mean Apple Podcasts Connect. We have a video on that right here. And then Spotify for podcasters. We have a video on that right here. Now, here is the thing. These are going to give you a little bit more granular details because none of it all meshes together super well in a podcast host. So it's good to actually take the time and go, number one, understand what your podcast is doing on these platforms and to get deeper analytics. Now, that doesn't sound fun at all, but again, if you're not tracking, you're slacking. Now, here is the other thing. Apple Podcasts Connect and Spotify for podcasters, as of very recently, are not IAB certified. All it means is it is not following like a standard for downloads or numbers or listens, etc. So they are kind of just doing whatever. So you're going to see fluctuations, but that doesn't mean you can't get better trends by going into those podcast player apps. So go in there, understand your analytics, go watch some of the videos that we've made, and you're going to definitely get more clues on how to do better, and that's going to alleviate you thinking this is a lost cause. Now, if you're not promoting your show, then you're definitely destined for failure. If you're going to put so much work into podcasting, into setting up the microphone and guests, or just recording or scripting or doing a video like this, then why would you not take the time to promote it? And this one, I'm telling you, is huge. This means using all the possible channels available to you to promote your show and having an effective launch plan. This means your email list. This means your followers on every platform that you're on. This means all the family, friends, and acquaintances in your phone. This means mentioning it to people when you're at a networking event or you're at an industry event. This is by far one of the biggest reasons podcasts fail, is because suddenly we get super self-conscious about the fact that we're telling people we have a podcast. And a lot of that comes from the fact that you're probably already thinking for the person who's going to receive the message. You are thinking that they're thinking everyone has a podcast, or oh, here we go, another person with a podcast. If you eliminate thinking for them from your thoughts and you doing what you have to do and think for your listeners, for the people that need to hear your message, I think you're going to be a lot less reluctant to promote your show. Now, just so you know, I do it too. I recently had to fundraise for a mission trip with my church to South Africa because it's an expensive trip. I've been on 2 mission trips before that I've paid for myself. I helped other people fundraise, but never have I tried to get people to contribute to something for me. So I made a YouTube video, I started making social media posts, and I cannot even tell you the responses that I got. The people that I thought I could count on to contribute did not. And some people who I had no idea were even following me on social media were some of the ones who contributed the most. And that just goes to show you that if you're not telling people how they can help you, you won't get the help. Now, I get it. People are bombarded for things online all the time. But if this is in good faith and you are of service, then you just have to get out of that scarcity mindset and think in abundance. And you are going to provide abundant knowledge, expertise, or entertainment to your audience. Now, one quick caveat to this: you need a launch plan, which means probably 4 to 6 weeks prior to the podcast launching, if you have not launched already, is going to require efforts across all social media channels and all the things that I mentioned before, your email list, people in your phone, etc. Now, all that is huge and it does factor a lot into launch, but post-launch is actually where it counts the most. It's kind of like a weight loss goal. Like, you can hit a plan so hard for 3 months or a 12-week weight loss challenge, and you get to that goal and you are thrilled about it. The last thing you want is to lose that momentum. So post-launch promotion is going to be unbelievably critical to your success. And if you have not done that, or you want to avoid failing, make sure you keep your foot on the gas. Don't take it off. Now, the very last and most important reason why podcasts usually fail is because of expectations. I have had clients who have absolutely no social media presence and expect to get 10,000 downloads in the first couple months, as if they are bringing something absolutely historic to the podcast world without even having determined if they can gather a following or keep up with engagement on other social media platforms. Now, the reason that's important is because social media is algorithmic, right? You're playing to a system, and a podcast you don't have to, but at least if you have been in the practice of creating content, you will have been improving and understanding certain patterns, certain things that you need to do in order to reach people. So if you have a social media following, I would consider having probably 5 to 10% of that become part of your podcast audience, especially if it's short form content like TikTok, because just because you have 1 million followers on TikTok does not mean 1 million people are going to be listening to your podcast. It is going to be negligible. Now, that is not bad news. This is just a different medium, different people, different listeners, okay? People consume in different ways, and it is going to grow steady little by little, but having that expectation or that mindset in the beginning that whatever you have on social media, you're going to get a fraction of it, or if you don't have a social media following, it's going to be a big uphill battle. That's still worth it. You need to just have that expectation in mind. Now, other people also have an expectation that somehow they're going to chart. They're going to be in the top 50. They're going to be in the top 25 or whatever it may be, just like those people who have an Amazon bestseller that they promoted and sent out to all their friends to review. Subscriber velocity is one of the biggest reasons a podcast ends up on the charts. Not ratings, not reviews, and not really downloads either. It's how many people people are subscribing on a regular basis. So you will see, and a lot of people don't talk about this, people will pay to promote their podcast on certain social media platforms, on podcast players as well. And yes, they might chart very briefly, but it's all going to regress to the mean because they stopped putting money behind it because they already got the little screenshot that they wanted to say their podcast was ranking. And the last expectation is that podcasting can become expensive. As you develop and as you want to improve your quality with better lenses or a better microphone or a boom arm or a computer or lights or soundproofing, it can get expensive. And not just because of the gear, but because of money you might put behind it to advertise on social media platforms, just like I talked about. So all of a sudden you're putting money into people who are going to edit for you, whether it's video or audio. You're putting money into gear, to lights, to microphones, to cameras. You're putting money into promoting it. You're putting time into promoting it. Suddenly you're like, this is expensive. And the word expense is in the word expensive, which means you're not making money off it. It is not bringing anything in. And all your ROI expectations about the sponsorships that you would get, the brand deals that you would get, all just dissipate. And you're like, I am done because I cannot continue to spend X, Y, and Z amount of money on something that's not making me money. The best podcasters I know, the best podcasters that we work with by far, are the ones who are not in it for the money. They just create and they create and they create, and they have such lucrative opportunities right now. But they sat on them and are continuing to sit on them because they know the payday at the end is going to be bigger. So the immediacy of a need for some sort of return on all these different things that you might be pouring money into is the biggest reason people fail in podcasting and just don't come back. So if you enjoyed this, please leave us comments on anything we may have left out, or visit our free resource library because it's going to help you with your podcasting journey.